Hey everyone, welcome back. We're diving into some fascinating territory today, unpacking Morgan Housel's The Psychology of Money.
Really gets you thinking about those hidden forces shaping our decisions around wealth and success.
Right, it's not just about the numbers, it's about the psychology. Like, take Ronald Reed, for instance.
Ronald Reed.
Yeah, the Vermont janitor, drove an old Toyota, lived frugally. You know the type. But here's the kicker. He quietly amassed an $8 million fortune.
Wow, that's incredible. How?
No inheritance, no lottery win. Just decades of disciplined saving and investing. The power of consistency, right?
The snowball effect in action. It's amazing how much it can build up over time.
Exactly. But here's where it gets interesting. Housel compares Red to Richard Fusison, Harvard MBA, Wall Street hotshot. On paper, the picture of success.
I see where you're going with this.
Exactly. Lived large, borrowed heavily. Then 2008 happened. Wiped him out.
Two drastically different stories. Shows how external success can be deceiving. Red found contentment without all the outward validation.
Makes you think about what success really means, right? And how much of our perception is shaped by our own experiences. Someone who lived through the high inflation of the 70s will view bonds completely differently than someone who didn't.
Absolutely. Our personal experiences become our money scripts. Our subconscious beliefs about risk, reward, and what really matters. It's not always rational, it's emotional.
It's true. We all have those ingrained beliefs, even if we don't realize it. Did your family talk about money growing up? Or was it taboo? Those things stick with you.
For sure. And it makes me think about the Bill Gates story. We all know it, right? Pure luck lands him in one of a few high schools with a computer in the 60s, and the rest is history.
Right.
But there's this other side to it. His friend, Kent Evans, equally brilliant, tragically died in a mountaineering accident before they graduated.
Oh, right. Yeah. What a shame.
Exactly. Same drive, same potential, but one unpredictable event changes everything. We focus on success as skill, but it reminds us luck and risk are two sides of the same coin.
It's not always about making the right moves, but also about avoiding being in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Exactly. Which brings us to one of those fundamental concepts, compounding.
The snowball effect.
Yeah.
You start small, stay consistent, and suddenly you're looking at massive results.
The opposite of how our brains are wired. We crave immediate gratification, but compounding is about playing the long game. Small, consistent actions, especially with investing, yield extraordinary results over time.
It's like that saying, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. But, getting rich and staying rich, two very different things.
Completely different. Look at Jesse Livermore, the legendary trader, made and lost fortunes multiple times. Same with Abraham Jermansky, the real estate tycoon. Amassing wealth and holding onto it require totally different mindsets.
Riding the wave is one thing, weathering the storm is another, which reminds me of what Housel calls tail events.
Those outlier events, totally unpredictable, yet massively impactful.
Exactly. The blockbuster movie that comes out of nowhere or picking the next Amazon in the stock market.
And it's not just about luck. It's understanding that a few significant wins can overshadow countless losses. But you have to be in the game long enough to experience them. Like venture capital. Most startups fail, but the ones that succeed.
They make up for all the others, and then some. It's like that Russell 3000 study Housel talks about. Most of the returns since 1980 came from just 7% of the companies.
That's the power of tails. Even in a diversified portfolio, a small number of investments can drive most of the gains. But you have to withstand the dips, the flops along the way.
Because those unexpected dips can really throw you. Speaking of unexpected, who could have predicted those German tanks in Stalingrad being taken down by mice?
Talk about an unforeseen variable. It highlights the need for room for error in our thinking. We can't predict everything. Building in buffers, having a margin of safety. It's not about eliminating risk, but managing it.
It's not about predicting the unpredictable. It's about accepting that we don't know what we don't know and things change.
Constantly. Our future selves won't want the same things we do today. Remember that story about Housel's friend who became a doctor? Worked tirelessly to achieve his dream job, only to find it unfulfilling?
Wow, yeah. Easy to get caught that trap of sunk costs.
Exactly. We hold on to things, jobs, investments, relationships, because we've invested so much, even if they no longer serve us.
It's tough, though. How do we avoid that trap, especially when it comes to our finances? Are we supposed to constantly question every decision?
It's more about building in moments of reflection, of reevaluation. Your 5-year plan shouldn't be set in stone. It's a living document, just like your investment strategy, just like your budget.
Acknowledge that change is inevitable, both in the markets and in ourselves.
Speaking of change, It's like Housel says, we often underestimate the true cost of our financial goals. We get so fixated on the dream, right? Early retirement, that big vacation, whatever it is.
But we forget about the journey to get there.
Exactly. We see the reward, but not the price tag attached. And it's not always about the money itself.
It's the emotional roller coaster, right?
Yeah.
The stress, the constant second guessing.
It takes a toll, that's for sure. And we're just talking about investing here. Imagine the toll on entrepreneurs putting in those crazy hours, years of their lives.
Sacrificing time with family and friends. There's always a trade-off.
Always. So it begs the question, is the payoff worth the price? Not just financially, but personally.
Asking the tough questions. I like it.
And that price is different for everyone, right? Which is why you have to be so careful about taking financial advice.
Oh, tell me about it. Everyone's got an opinion, a hot stock tip.
But they're playing a different game. What works for a day trader is completely different from a long-term investor. You can't use the same playbook.
Totally. Know your goals, know your risk tolerance. Don't just blindly follow someone else's lead.
Couldn't agree more. Speaking of things that can lead us astray, pessimism. It's almost seductive, isn't it? Especially when it comes to finances.
Oh, absolutely. Doom and gloom always seems to get the headlines.
It's like we're hardwired to focus on the negative. But if you're always bracing for the storm, you never enjoy the sunshine.
Love that analogy.
Yeah.
So how do we find that balance between acknowledging the risks and staying optimistic?
Well, for one, remember that progress is often gradual. It's the setbacks that are sudden and dramatic. Like, think about the decline in heart disease deaths over the past few decades.
That's huge progress. But we don't hear about it every day.
Exactly. One natural disaster, one market crash, and it's all over the news. We overestimate the impact of short-term events and underestimate the power of long-term trends.
It's about tuning out the noise and staying focused on the bigger picture. Speaking of the bigger picture, Housel ends his book with that fascinating look at the history of the American consumer. Almost like he's saying, to understand our financial anxieties today, we need to understand how we got here.
It's a fascinating take. He takes us back to 1945, the end of World War II. Uncertainty, but also this massive sense of opportunity, right?
Millions of soldiers returning home ready to rebuild.
Exactly. But also a housing shortage, high unemployment. So what did policymakers do? They encouraged spending. A complete 180 from the wartime mentality of saving.
Get the economy moving again no matter what.
Exactly. The GI Bill gave veterans access to mortgages with almost no money down. Fueled the housing boom, the rise of the suburbs.
Makes sense. Affordable housing, a chance to start fresh after the war. But it wasn't just housing.
Oh no, it was this wave of consumerism. Credit cards, installment plans, buy now, pay later. But it's important to remember, this wasn't just about easy credit. There was a hidden productivity boom that took root during the 1930s.
Wait, the Depression? How so?
Necessity breeds innovation, right? Businesses had to streamline, become more resourceful. When the war ended and demand surged, those innovations were ready.
All those new products,
Yeah.
appliances, cars, TVs, suddenly they were accessible to the average American.
Exactly. Jobs were created, manufacturing boomed. It was an economic boom, and prosperity was more evenly distributed than ever before. Wages rose, the income gap narrowed.
A stark contrast to the income inequality we see today.
It was a different time. Women entered the workforce in record numbers. There was a sense of optimism, a shared purpose.
Sounds almost idyllic. But, of course, it couldn't last forever. It's true. Nothing lasts forever. The 1970s, Housel says, that's where things started to shift. Economic turmoil, inflation, unemployment, the end of that post-war boom.
The party was over. But even as things changed, many Americans clung to those old expectations, the strong middle class, upward mobility. That debt was a stepping stone, not a millstone.
A disconnect between expectations and reality.
Exactly, and that's where Housel sees the roots of a lot of our current anxieties.
So even when the economy rebounded in the 80s and 90s, something was fundamentally different.
The prosperity wasn't as evenly spread. Income gap widened, the top doing better and better, while wages for most people stagnated.
A few yachts, a whole lot of driftwood. Not exactly a rising tide.
And that fueled a different kind of consumerism. Less about need, more about keeping up appearances.
Keeping up with the Joneses on steroids.
Exactly. Bigger houses, fancier cars, those Instagram-worthy vacations, all fueled by easy credit and this idea that success equals stuff.
Until the House of Cards collapsed in 2008.
Right. The crash was a lot of things, but Housel argues that big stretch, living beyond means, played a big role.
So where does that leave us today? How do we navigate this financial landscape? with all its psychological landmines.
The million-dollar question. Housel doesn't give us a roadmap, but he does offer some wisdom, humility, for one. We don't have all the answers. The future is uncertain.
It's okay to not know everything.
More than okay, it's essential. Ask for help. Get different perspectives. Admit your mistakes.
Be open to learning as you go.
Exactly. He also emphasizes financial independence. Not just the money, but the freedom and choices it gives you.
To align your life with your values without being tied to a paycheck.
Right. And of course, saving, building that buffer against the unexpected. But honestly, the biggest takeaway for me is self-awareness.
Knowing those money scripts we talked about, right? The beliefs that drive our decisions, even the ones we're not aware of.
Yes, it's easy to get caught up in the numbers, the strategies, the hype, but at the core, it's our psychology, holding us back or pushing us forward.
So true. Well, as we wrap up this deep dive into the psychology of money, what's the one thing you hope listeners take away?
That this stuff is personal. Your relationship with money is a reflection of you, your values, your experiences, even your insecurities. Take the time to understand those and you'll make better decisions, not just with money, but in life.
Couldn't have said it better myself. To everyone listening, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep exploring the fascinating world of personal finance.